So thanks for having me. My name is Cassie Cichorz. I work for WSDA. Before I get started, I do have lots of videos in this. I wanted you to be able to hear from multiple people who were involved, and the successes that they had and how we got here. So I'm going to turn off my camera. That way they hopefully play better, but I will turn it on at the end. So, to get started, at the Washington State Department of Agriculture, that's who I work for. So, you have to think about regulating, advocating, and basically providing services for the state's agricultural industry. And when you think about growing and feeding and the different components in that, you have to kind of think about pests. And I work for the pest program. And in the PEST program, you'll find dedicated individuals who are working really hard to protect our fields and our landscapes from living species and invasive organisms that could harm it. And for most, it's more than just a job. It's a career that they really have a passion for, and you can see this through their work. So we have entomologists who have a lifetime of fieldwork collection and identification in and out of the office, molecular biologists taking plant samples and bringing them back. You will find biologists doing education and outreach and working with the public. Let me move this in case you can see it. You will find scientists doing the hard backbreaking labor, innovating cutting edge research, and then a lot of work going into eradication. Okay, just making sure there's not. So that's kind of what brings us here.
Actually, as entomologists started thinking about Asian giant hornet back in 2013, when a number of people in southern China, unfortunately, were killed due to interactions with Asian giant hornets, and another 1,500 were pretty severely wounded by this particular pest. At least in the state where I was, we had no plan in place should this insect accidentally get here. So we actually started thinking about this way back then. The first thing Washington State did was we started training all of our other entomologists and our seasonal or temporary employees who handle survey work on recognition of the species. Little did we know we would actually end up getting our own detection of Asian giant hornet on December 8th of 2019. Even though it seems like we jumped right on it, we actually sort of had a plan in place already. And now it was time just to kind of get together with everybody and implement some of those plans that were designed kind of on a national framework way back in 2016. That actually led to quite a bit of success that we had in 2020.
So, how did we get to that northern giant hornet or Asian giant hornet, as you know it, probably murder hornet? It even has another couple of nicknames like yak killer hornet, giant sparrow bee. As Sven briefly mentioned, this truly was a collaboration between federal, state, and actually a lot of residents in Washington to make this project successful. So behind the scenes, we took our operations and communications and outreach and really aligned them closely to kind of update residents in real time, including sharing with them the times that we weren't as successful.
In 2019, and reporting Asian hornet in December, and myself went to Washington County and bring some Asian workers. Surprise to all of us. Every time I got a specimen, it would just be impressive. My most memorable moment was when I knocked on the homeowner's door. I was chatting with them, telling them live trap and checking it. She goes, "Oh, I saw one of those on her camera above our door." I'm like, "Really?" So she showed me the still photo of it. And I'm like going, "Yep, that's the Asian giant hornet." There is a homeowner who has a little webcam above her back door, and Asian giant hornet was right on the webcam.
Yeah, I have
2019.
I hope you can hear it. I apologize if you can't. I have it turned all the way up. Um, Okay. Well, we'll see if I can turn my volume up on the next video. I apologize. So basically just sharing with you, when Northern Giant Hornet was first found and discovered in 2019, it was found by a resident. And that kind of tells us, that the public can be involved. Then fast forward, we had a little help from the media. It can impact honeybees. So this was the first article that they published. Agent Giant Hornet invasion threatens honeybees in the Pacific Northwest. And this gained a little traction. People took interest. So over the winter, they went ahead and they interviewed researchers overseas, followed us as we went and hang more traps in the spring. And then they published this second article, Murder Hornets in the US, the Rush to Stop the Asian Giant Hornet. And this was at the height of COVID when everybody was bored at home and it had the word in it. This is when it came to the scenes and everybody took up involvement in the story.
Working with the media was
Let me make sure that the volume
an
on my
interesting event.
end is turned all the way up. Sorry,
this
guys.
year. More media contacts. Working with the media was an interesting event this year. We had more media contacts in the month of May probably than we normally have in an entire year. So our initial response, what we normally do with media is just a one-on-one conversation. And we tried to maintain that for that first week when we had Asian Giant Hornet, and that was just not sustainable at all. It was crazy, especially with the number of people who wanted to get interviews, not only the communications officers responding, but our team, especially Chris Looney and Sven Spieschiger, were all basically for the solid week, we were all just doing interviews. That's not sustainable because the program actually has to do their job, what they're hired for, besides talking to the media. And so the next time we had a big announcement or a big news break, we transitioned into doing our first ever virtual press conference.
Thank you, everybody, for taking a few minutes out of your day to hear the updates that we have.
So it was a little nerve-wracking that first time, but in the end, it was so much more manageable. It was a great way to connect with a lot of reporters at once, allow them to get the quotes and the video that they needed for their newspapers and broadcasts, etc., and also maintain our sanity. We also started a Facebook group, which for the New York Times story, I think had about 1,200 people in it. And a week later, after the New York Times story broke, there were 5,000 people in it. Social media did play a role actually in detecting Asian Giant Hornet. We had at least one report that I know of that was submitted directly through social media. It's not our ideal, but it definitely worked. And there were probably thousands of submissions that were sent through social media that I responded to, in addition to that one that actually was an Asian Giant Hornet. So social media was an invaluable tool for us to communicate this year.
Previously, when people asked me what I did for work, I used to have a big long speech about invasive species management. And now it's a lot easier because I can just say Asian Giant Hornet or have you heard of murder hornet?
Mm-hmm. So that unprecedented interest from the public and help from the media really got us moving and got us going forward. We had engagement, we had involvement, but it was on the front of people being scared. So we really had to go to work teaching them not murder hornets, had to say it, hate the name, love the memes, and teach them what the real threat was and why we should care. Northern Giant Hornet is known to be a predator of honeybees as well as other pollinators and things that could have a great impact in Washington. And my PowerPoint or my screen is frozen. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Um, it wouldn't be a good PowerPoint if we didn't have any issues. Let me stop sharing and reshare my screen. I apologize, guys. And slideshow. Share. Share. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, well, we're gonna miss a picture, but I will show you a video of the nest in the end. So what I was saying is we needed to teach the real threats that it could have here. And we went to work examining the first nest, and we were able to open it up and see all of the different parts and pieces that came out of the nest. We were able to take the frass and examine its DNA and teach residents in Washington, you know, here's the threats. We took all of that data, and instead of displaying it in a pie chart, we went and created a menu. So northern giant hornet, here's all the things it could eat. No rhyme or reason for the pricing, but note that it could impact flies, other beetles, bees, yellow jackets, wasps, and so many more species. We knew that the hornet, it flew around and it grabbed different insects, ripped their heads, wings off, mashed them up into little pellets that you see here, brought them back to the colony in order to feed it. So here's a video I will show you. And this is a nest. You can see the net going up to grab one of the northern giant hornets. This was a nest that we found about 20 feet up in the tree. You can see the hornets coming and going. And our goal here was to find this nest, remove the nest, and learn as much as we can. Because unfortunately, when the hornets came to the scene here, we went to study and research, and there just wasn't that many articles out there. There just wasn't that much known about the northern giant hornet. One of the first things that came was a published article, and actually one of our very own WSDA's, Chris Looney, helped make this. Scientists went to work grabbing climatic factors, seeing where the hornets could live and establish, coming up with this beautiful image for you. What this means is those areas of red, great climate suitability for the hornets to establish, yellows and spread into, but in that murky pond water, swamp color into the blue, not so great. So this helped us fuel in Washington saying, if we don't stop it, where could it spread? This was a scientific approach we brought to it, but we also went ahead and took this scientific data and curated messages to the general public into things that they would also understand and take interest in, saying, here's what you want to look for, and here's how you identify it. Everybody knew it was really large, but we told them, look for striping banded on the abdomen, kind of straight uniform lines. There's not any spots or any teardrops. And we told them to really look for that giant orange head. Be like me having a pumpkin for my head. It's not just as big and as wide as its body. We put a lot of effort into that education and that research, showing people some of the commonly missed and reported things, running social media campaigns, showing them this on the right is a cicada killer. Do you see those differences? And giving them the tools so that they could teach this to others. We attended lots of community events around where northern giant hornets were being detected, and continued to share that with the media and in the public interest to keep them transparently informed so well that they were interested in
Got a
themselves.
lot of interesting suggestions from the public on ways that can improve tracking or eradicating the Asian giant hornet. Many people suggested using tracking dogs. One person suggested that we train crows to bait on them and to kind of attack them SWAT team style. We had folks suggesting we tie little napalm bombs to any hornets that we caught and could take it back to their nest and detonate the nest.
I have a lariat. I could throw a rope around one of them's neck and drag it in with my horse.
This kind of public involvement is completely unprecedented for a program. Anything like this before. We're just a handful of people, you know, mostly based in Olympia. And what we really need is eyes everywhere, and the public really stepped forward and provided us with that, and I am extremely grateful. I would rather hear hundreds of reports that are just native insects that turn out to be nothing rather than there's the one that could turn out to be an Asian giant hornet and lead us to a nest. I am just so overwhelmed by public response and very grateful because it helps us do our jobs.
And we continued to do our jobs, and we decided that this is what we needed to find. This was our goal, to locate this nest. This is how we will stop northern giant hornets or Asian giant hornets from moving forward. And what we knew from the research is that, they typically nest in the ground. So we went forth depicting our plans, thinking this is what we would find. However, it turns out in Washington, all of our nests were in tree cavities that you see here. So those combs will be stacked together and they will house thousands of hornets. Actually, in Nanaimo, British Columbia, they removed a northern giant hornet nest from the ground, and it was about 2 or 3 combs, a couple feet wide, but housed just as many hornets. We do know that the hornets make one entrance typically into their nest, whether this be in that tree cavity or at the base of a tree where there's some rotted out roots or an old animal or old rodent burrow. But this is likely going to be in a forested area. So how are we going to find it? Because I know if I go outside that there are tons and tons of trees. It's hard to get around in forested areas, especially where there's vines and different things. Do I want to accidentally stumble upon a hornet's nest and potentially harm myself? We know a couple other things that, like, when they leave the nest, they're their full adult size. They fly, maybe 5 miles to find food. And we know a good amount about their life cycle. So I'll share the last thing that we can use to help us is kind of that life cycle and a bit on it. If you understand this, you'll understand what we started with and how we can decide what to do when with the program and when to work with the public. Really inform everybody how they can help. So, and this is frozen again. Here. Okay. So right now it's winter. Everything is overwintering. And what happens is the queen is the only thing alive. She will wake up in the spring and she will find somewhere to start her nest. She's living somewhere sheltered or potentially underground. And in the spring, she'll feed on some sweet things, some carbohydrates as she hunts and work to start that nest. She will only be making workers. And the workers will be working. They will be building that nest. She will be continuing to lay eggs, strengthening and enlarging that colony. Then as we get into the summer, about July here, that colony would reach its maturity and there would be tons and tons of workers flying around. As we get closer into the fall is when that colony has gotten large enough and she is going to stop laying workers and she is going to start making queens and males. Those new queens and those males, when they leave the colony, they're going to mate very close. The males will die. Those new queens will fly off to overwinter. I did misspeak earlier and I said that colony reaches its maturity in July. I meant to say that most of the workers are out foraging. It's a little bit later when that will happen. But if you look at the life cycle here in the different colors, you will notice that it changes to red over in this September, October, which is our fall time. And the reason we point this out is because we have those new queens and those males, but because of their large size, they tend to need a lot of protein in their diet. And this is when they are known to attack and predate on the honeybees. So all these bees here you see are chopped in half. They are missing their heads and they are just all dead outside of the hive. What happened was the northern giant hornet, it flew up to the nest. The honeybees flew out to protect themselves. Then it systematically grabbed every single bee, chopped off their heads and dropped their bodies. So that's the problem that we can't have here. We need these precious pollinators. The hornets are so systematically good at it that they can wipe out 45 to 65,000 bees in the matter of an hour and a half on average. thing that we learned as we were going through this, that, you know, we primarily keep European honeybees. In Japan, they keep Japanese honeybees, or over in Asia. Different species, we're not sure if they can hybridize, but I can share with you that when the hornet flies up to the nest, the Japanese honeybees will come out. They will create a ball around the hornet, buzzing and warm their body temperatures up just enough so that the hornet slightly cooks alive and they can defend themselves. Unfortunately, our honeybees over here in the States haven't grown up and evolved with the hornets. They don't know how to do that. They are completely susceptible. Okay, so I know the life cycle. I know I need to find the nest. And I know a little bit over about the culture in Asia, and that the larva is considered a delicacy. You'll find hornets in vats of alcohol. Culture is just different. To harvest the larva, to have it up in a feast, is very dangerous. It's about $30 a pound. Way back then, it was a good source of protein. You may find energy drinks that could enhance your performance due to the northern giant hornets. So all of those things considered and wrapped together, I know they're invasive here to the States. I know I don't want them. And I know I need to find the nests to stop them from moving forward. If I can stop the nests before new queens emerge, I won't have new populations next year. But how do I find this out in a field with lots of other trees? How can I do it without getting hurt? One thing that we had behind our help was, again, that public. So here's a map of Washington for you. That area of in red is Whatcom County. That's where that first hornet was detected, so that's where we started. Here's a zoom in map of that area. We asked the public to tell us every single time they saw a northern giant hornet, and we put it on a map. We also were later able to map the nests that we removed, but this got us started, okay? Public sightings of the hornets. The next thing that we said was, is there some way we can attract them or trap them? Is there a scent that they're interested in? We went to some overseas researchers, talking to them, saying, you know, how do you look for the hornets? What works, what doesn't? Took all the knowledge they had to share with us, brought it back, and said, what can we have here that we can use, and what is readily available? Then we took those two things, those public detections where people had saw the hornets, and we put it on a map. So all those red dots here, we knew the hornets would fly so far. We drew a circumference around that and overlaid a map. That would give us our trapping grid, but I'll let the expert share it with you.
You know, this was something that really was dropped on us, not something we expected. It wasn't a planned survey, of course. Asian giant hornet just kind of hit us. The data collection was a little different than our surveys normally go. We ended up getting a lot of crowdsourcing data, so data collection by citizen scientists and input via our crowdsourcing apps. WSDA used ArcGIS Online to produce the Hornet Watch apps so that the public could submit sightings of Asian giant hornet, as well as track their traps that they placed. It was kind of difficult to actually put that all together in a kind of a way that met all the needs of everybody internally and externally. So I started working for the Watch.
So then we were able to make this beautiful map here for you. Every green dot you see is where we place a northern giant hornet trap. Each season we would go to work. Anytime those adults could be out flying, we made sure we had those traps up for them. Each year we placed upwards of 1,000 traps, and you can see what this looked like on a map here. It ended up being a mixture of orange juice and rice cooking wine with some slots at the top. The idea is if the hornet flies by, it smells the scent of that bait and it's lured in. But remember, I continually tell you that we have lots of collaboration here between us and residents. So this map you see here really expanded from where we are just trapping, because we told residents in Washington, you know we have the hornet here, but we're not sure if it's expanded into different areas. So we told them, here's how you can make the traps, make them, map them with us, and help us locate them. Okay.
You know, this was something that really
Sorry, guys. I am frozen. Like always, nothing ever works that well, so let me go ahead and restart this PowerPoint. I shouldn't have thrown so many videos in it, but I thought you would really enjoy hearing from other people other than just myself. So I have a question for you, right? So would you rather be stung by a northern giant hornet, or would you rather eat a northern giant hornet larva? And you can go ahead and post your answer in the chat box for me. It's quite interesting. Now that you learned a little bit about it. I see some people would like to eat it. Make sure this is playing.
Citizen.
Okay. Some people say neither. I'm really not interested in either, but does work. Okay. We should be back. Okay. All right.
Citizen scientists played a huge role in trapping Asian giant hornets in 2020. They put out over 1,200 traps, checked them each week, and sent the trap contents to the WSDA lab for examination.
You get up early in the morning, have your coffee, then you put on your gloves because everything is really, really gross. Traps come in all different forms. You have things like sludge like this, and then sometimes you have really nice clean ones like this.
Jessica and Brandy checked the public traps, but we also set our own traps. Chanda Henny is in charge of going through the WSDA traps. When the samples come in, they look like this in little bottles. And I pour them into a little dish and I pick through them looking for Asian giant hornet, yellow jackets, wasps, bees.
It's a lot. You can have a trap take you like 1 minute, or you can have a trap take you sometimes 2 hours. But it's really fun and exciting when you find something new.
My favorite part of this is just working with insects. I love working with insects and learning.
It's kind of like going through a needle in the haystack sometimes and finding treasure, especially when you're going through like sludge of fruit flies. Everything's just kind of brown and mush, and then you'll have like a shiny metallic, parasitoid come out, and that's kind of exciting.
The grossest thing I ever found in these traps, well, let's see, I find frogs, nails, slugs. I found a rodent, a mouse, shrew, I don't know what it was, but I think that was the grossest thing I ever found in these traps.
Here's an example of what we go through, like thousands of fruit flies looking for these insects.
Yeah, so it's long, it's stinky, it's smelly, it's sticky, but it's also really fun.
I have found a couple of Asian giant hornets.
This in particular, though, was exciting just because it was COVID, we're working from home, and then all of a sudden we get this headline news project, and then we're home working, and then we're seeing Chris on the TV, and then all of this exciting footage. I thought that was pretty cool to be part of something pretty big and on even international news, but definitely national news.
Oh, so that map there that I showed you here, right, of all those residents that helped us trap and set traps, they were trapping from, July all the way through November. And they were taking those samples each week and sticking them up in the mail and sending to us, or we set up drop-off locations. So that way we could go through and analyze each trap content to make sure we weren't harming some of our native species by going through those. So the next thing that we hope to do is that we wanted to trap one of these hornets. A lot of people, I ask you, if you ever see a hornet, what should you do? And most people are like, well, kill it. And then I go ahead and tell them, I actually want it alive. Because remember, my goal is to find the nest. And if I have a live hornet, there is technology that I can use, attach it to the hornet, feed the hornet, let it go. It takes a radio tag with it, and then I can use that radio tag to get to our goal of finding the hornet's nest. It sounds easy, right? You just have to catch a hornet, attach a tag, let it go. But then you have to think that these hornets are small. They can fly. They can go pretty much just as fast, faster than we can run. They can fly overhead where we might have to crawl through raspberry bushes. Can they really carry these radio tags? Is the range long enough? Is there technology that's such a thing? These were all questions that scientists had to answer before they got to this spot of putting on these suits and removing that nest, leading into a successful eradication.
The process of finding the first nest was pretty fun. It was also wrought with frustration. The first one being that we couldn't get a tag glued on very effectively. We couldn't get the glue to dry fast enough without warming up the hornet, so that never turned out to be an effective method. So eventually we landed on tying the tag underneath, which in fact turned out to be the technique we used later, and that worked out great. We finally got the hornet to chill, this first hornet. We tied our Bluetooth tag to her, and then she proceeded not to fly at all. I think we just wore the poor thing out, chilling it, heating it up, trying to feed it jelly, chilling it, heating up, trying to feed it jelly, and I think by the time we were done, so was she. The final tagging event turned out to be fantastic. This time we had upgraded to some professional tags that are used to track things like songbirds and other large insects. We had 4 living wasps to work with. 2 of them we successfully tagged and they both flew. One of them flew to the bushes and stopped flying forever. And the other one flew to a tree, hung out in the tree for a while. We eventually knocked her down, fed her some more jelly. And this time she flew in the other direction. She went where we didn't expect the nest to be. We followed her for a while until we lost the signal, and then did kind of what we expected to do all along. We walked around in the woods with this kind of radio antenna until we were able to pick up a signal and follow the signal until it got stronger and stronger and stronger until we found ourselves standing in front of a hornet nest.
I have to tell you, I was the one standing under the opening when it was found, and that was the end of a very long, hard week of us trying our best to get a radio tag onto a hornet and follow it back to its nest. And it was very gratifying that all of the hard work and some of the practice we had done earlier in the season had finally paid off. We were getting a signal that was stronger. We knew we were standing right next to a nest somewhere, and it's a scary thing because we know they defend their nests when disturbed. So literally standing under the opening with my hand up on the tree, my colleague Chris Looney and I were looking at a pile of basically nest spoilings at the base of the tree and wondering, is this evidence that there's a nest in the area? But it really didn't seem to make sense. And then hearing them exit the nest a few feet above my head was just probably the most amazing feeling in the world.
So we wrapped the tree with plastic, and then we vacuumed everything out of the tree. And then we cut the tree down and took it back to WSU.
Opening the nest itself, once we got it to the cold room at Washington State University Puyallup Research Station, was frankly kind of fun. They had a nice cold room that we could keep locked and ensure that no hornets would get out, which turned out to be a good thing because it was full of hornets once we opened it up.
I forget exactly how much stuff was in there. I mean, I think between queens and larvae and everything, I think there was 500 specimens in there.
But opening it up was super exciting. It was also a little nerve-wracking. We didn't expect to see so many living hornets. And so I think our calm plans to just, look at the nest, take pictures of it, measure it, weigh it, pour acid on it and see if it reacts, whatever you would do to make it look sciencey. That kind of went out the window as we found ourselves in this mad rush to ensure that hornets didn't just fly all over the place. Granted, they were cold and they weren't moving very fast, and we doused them with carbon dioxide, but you don't want to take chances.
Just the overwhelming feeling of joy that all of the hard work we did for the summer finally paid off.
It would have been a much more disappointing 2020, a year that has already been disappointing for so many reasons, if we hadn't found that nest after all.
Not just a happy moment for 2020. I would have to say this is one of the highlights of the entire career that I've had in entomology.
And as you know, the success with the hornets didn't stop in 2020. This December, or last December, I guess, we declared the northern giant hornet eradicated from Washington State. And then that would also be the United States as well. So we went 3 years without finding any hornets or finding any nests. We did find one nest after we found 3 nests after 2020 and 2021, but nothing to follow. A couple things here to share with you, is We fought the hornets on the front, but any time that we were with them, we were trying to gather as much data and research as we could. So the hornets on the left here, that's just a sheer amount to show you how many come out of the nest. The hornets on the right here, they are alive, but soon we can use them for research. However, we just don't have that many hornets here, and I still don't have that many answers for you because our goal was to wipe them out. So what we're currently doing is actually collaborating with researchers overseas in places where northern giant hornets are prosperous. We want to know how far can queens fly? We want to know when do they fly? Is there a better time of day during night? Do they fly as far from their nest as we're known? We want to be able to collect hornets all from different walks and regions. So that way, if we find a hornet again, we're able to take its DNA and say, well, it came from this region of Japan, or it came from over here in Korea. We are working to see if there's some type of lure or some type of trap that they're more selective to, and of course, learn and immerse ourselves in the culture. So there's a lot of work and a lot of things that went into the Hornets project. You can hop online to our website to learn more. It really was successful due to that collaboration of us working with the public as well as working in the scientific front, combining our operations with communications department and really working to get the word out there. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and reach out to me via email here. Also, you can send them to the Hornets email. You can give us a phone call, and there's that website for you. That's all I really have to share with you today, but I knew I wanted to leave there to be time for questions at the end. So give them this way if there are